Computex included all sorts of oddities this year, like the Wheel of Star mod at Coolermaster's booth, the massive Corsair concept slate enclosure that used tooling costing nearly $750,000, and the Thermaltake level 20 monolith of aluminum and glass. But we also had a chance to cover more consumer-targeted cases, and today we're looking at the best ATX cases at the show, including Lian Li, SilverStone, EVGA, Coolermaster, Thermaltake, and Be Quiet in the frontrunner group. There's also a bonus entry in the Micro STX category as well. Before getting to that, this coverage is brought to you by Corsair's new T1 race chair, which is a $350 gaming targeted chair using a bucket-style race seat. The chair arms have 4-directional movement for configuration to your liking, and as a bonus, they use rollerblade wheels. Learn more at the link in the description below. This case roundup won't include every single thing we saw at the show and will exclude some of the more exotic cases like the concept slate, the InWin WinBot, for example, the floating, and the Thermaltake level 20, but there's still plenty to get through. The article below will contain an updated table with each case and links to further information on everything here if you want more depth. We're starting with Lian Li's new Alpha series of cases, as the company makes another attempt to enter the mass consumer market. Rather than use aluminum and lots of glass in the Alpha 330 and 350 cases, Lian Li is instead using steel to help lower price and bring it to mass market. This means that shipping lower-end Alpha 330s will not include any fans with them, as Lian Li wants you to buy your own to again help lower price. The Alpha 330 targets a $100 price point and uses the same tooling as the 350 internally, just with a difference in top and front panel height, where the 350 is running a taller build with front I/O and additional buttons for LEDs. We think the 330 is the most interesting here, given its lower price, and could make for one of Lian Li's best ventures in the consumer market thus far. We're not sure how airflow will pan out with the glass panel front, but the company might still make some changes, like slits in the side panel or the side of the front panel for better breathing, but we'll look at all of that in due time. For now, the Alpha 330 is one of the best cases to watch from Lian Li, and both cases come in both black and white finishes. SilverStone had 3 new ATX cases on display, though we'll talk about the RVZ04 in a moment for a non-ATX case. The PS15 is Silverstone's most noteworthy case from the show, we think. Everything is still subject to change here, including case tooling, but most of the cases use some sort of familiar Silverstone cooling from either Redline or Kublai cases of the past. We saw bits and pieces of the previous Kublai and Redline case in the newcomers, and the PS15 makes the best mixture of function-focused cooling, ventilation, and some of the front panel looks that Silverstone's trying to adopt, given the current market trends. The RL06 recently chart-topped in our benchmarks with significantly better cooling than all of its competition that we've tested, something afforded by the case's mesh front intake and focus on removing solid panel restrictions to airflow. And while the PS15 takes parts of this approach, they also try to account for that current trend of covering up the front with something solid. So they do that with a somewhat mesh and ventilated front panel that's a bit denser in the steel parts of the mesh. Also keeping with trends, the PS15 uses a tinted tempered glass side panel with a minimalistic approach to drive support, another major trend lately. The case is more of a mid-tower, like all 3 cases that we're looking at from Silverstone right now. The PS15 will be priced at $60. The other cases at the show were the $70 RL08, though Silverstone might rename it to the Kublai family, and the $80 to $90 Redline 07, which features a geometric split down the center, whereas the RL08 uses more of an S-shaped curve with red lighting. Neither of these 2 cases have a focus on cooling and are clearly trying to stick with trends of blocked front ventilation. For this reason, we think the PS15 is the most interesting of the lot right now. As for the honorable mention from Silverstone, the new Raven RVZ04 is the smallest possible form factor that can still support a gaming machine. It's able to achieve this by using a Micro STX motherboard, which are available rarely but primarily from ASRock, along with an MXM video card. Here's the problem though. This case and its platform hinges on users being vocal about wanting it. The RVZ04 can fit an MXM GTX 1070 and a Micro STX motherboard with a high-end CPU, but that won't matter until AMD and NVIDIA make MXM cards available through retail channels. Right now, you can only get them really in sort of a gray market, meaning that they're expensive as well. We think NVIDIA and AMD might be hesitant to make MXM cards available because they don't want users keeping old laptops alive, but we're not really sure if there's a legitimate reason otherwise. If MXM ends up on retail channels, the RVZ04 and its Micro STX platform could permit one of the smallest gaming PC builds possible. SilverStone is even making custom MXM GPU coolers to accommodate the platform. Coolermaster is making a big return to cases this year, primarily their older case lines. The Cosmos is a return to the big cases of yore, though. It's still useful for a shrinking market of data enthusiasts or large workstation users. The Cosmos C700P leverages its size to permit an invertible motherboard tray, similar to the Be Quiet Darkbase Pro 900. The motherboard tray can be completely removed from the system can then be installed, and it can be placed back in the case facing either left or right, depending on preference. The side panels are also side agnostic, making it easy to completely rotate case layout if desirable, and this follows Coolermaster's new modular focus. Aside from this, the C700P can outfit 8 drives in the front, something we haven't heard much in the last few years, and has additional space on the front of the power supply shroud for a primary SSD mount. The front of the case folds out for access to a dust filter, which also folds out, and the 140mm fans sit behind this. Another large dust filter covers the bottom of the case, where the C700P's higher legs elevate the enclosure for cool air intake, and a radiator cage is present under the PSU shroud for this region of the case, giving it exposure to outside air through the underside of the enclosure. There is support for 3 140mm fans in the front of the case, one 140mm in the rear, and then a couple on the top as well. And stock, the case comes with 2 140mm front fans in the bottom 2 sections of the installation area, and one 140mm rear fan. None of these have LEDs, so it's a bit different from the H500P that we'll be talking about later. This is a true workstation enclosure. For now, Coolermaster is expecting pricing to be in the $300 to $350 range, partially because of the 4mm thick tempered glass side panel with tapered sides and its hinge, and release is sometime in October. If you're building a machine that's going to be working with a lot of data and is more of a workstation focus, this is a good case to look at. And in that similar market, this next one is quick, since it's based on a case that we covered last year. Be Quiet has refreshed its Darkbase Pro 900 line with a new white edition, which will ship in a limited quantity of 2,000 units at first, but the white looks good on this case. White is notoriously difficult to get right when mixing materials, so Be Quiet spent most of its time ramping up this case manufacturing with tone matching the plastics and the metals of the case, and was able to get the white to match on all of the panels. We can't say that for all the cases we've reviewed in the past that are white though. The case should run about $10 more than the standard DB Pro 900, making it around $260, and will otherwise be identical. Each case will include a nameplate with the case number of the production run. Availability will start in late Q3, early Q4, and Be Quiet might add on more to the production run if it's in high demand. And we're hoping to review this one once it comes out, though the core features are the same as the previous black version, which includes an invertible motherboard tray, just like the C700P, with some more unique, customizable, and modular features that Be Quiet advertised at last year's show. For something more affordable, EVGA's DG7 series of cases will finally hit production after a long delay. We first saw the DG7 at CES this year, but the case has now been finalized into a series of DG7 cases, including the DG73, 75, 76, and 77. The only number they skip is the 74. All 3 cases carry the same tooling, with the difference primarily being cosmetic to where the tempered glass plates are. The DG73 will be more budget focused and should be priced roughly around $60. EVGA's DG73 will include a single stock fan, will have only one tempered glass panel on the front, and will use an acrylic side window on the left side. This is a bit different from most cases that use tempered glass for one side, since they tend to put it on the left, so that sets the DG7 apart in some ways. The higher end of the spectrum, the 77 and 76, are differentiated from each other primarily by the presence of a K-boost button and an extra fan on the DG77. The K-boost button, if you're not familiar, basically just maxes out the GPU and the CPU in their highest P states at all times. So if you wanted to run your max clocks for some reason, you could do that with the K-boost button without needing software. The 77 should be priced under $150 and will include 3 tempered glass panels on the front and on both sides. Looking now at Thermaltake's View 21 and Core G21, these cases also target the more affordable price point at around $70, and they'll do so with 2 different faceplates. The View 21 uses an acrylic panel in the front with a rounded front end on the left side, wrapping around the case and allowing intake on the right side. The G21, meanwhile, sticks with a mesh front. The mesh is a bit dense and not as breathable as, again, the RL06, for example, but still breathes a whole lot more air than most of the cases on the market today. Both cases have a tempered glass left side panel, continuing the trend of cases in the $60 to $70 range with tempered glass paneling, which seems to be a big theme this year, and details are TBD on how many fans are included. A lot of these cases are still prototypes or early versions. Thermaltake also had new cases in the 7 and 9 series, like the View 91 TG, which has suicide doors on each side, vertical GPU mount, and some tooling from the W100 just with a new back panel for the GPU mounting and a different paneling on the outside of the case. And next we're moving on to the case that takes our highest award for the best case at Computex 2017, and that's the Coolermaster H500P. The H500P has us the most excited for benchmarking and analysis because it is a revisit to the company's critically acclaimed half line. We actually used the half X heavily in one of our earliest test benches. The half series hasn't aged well though. It features old hat design cues with a dust-heavy approach to the exterior, and the H500P aims to resurrect the half brand, but does so while borrowing modern design tropes to limit dust and noise while still hanging on to its signature 200mm fans and high airflow focus. This includes two 200mm fans in the front with RGB LEDs included in the case stock, and then it's also got room for 200s in the top, or you can go with 140s in the top, part of the top section. So there's two top sections, one on the inside of the case, one on the top of the case. The one on the inside allows for three 120mm fans, the one on the top allows for three 140mm fans, and we have a full video talking about the rest of the details of this case, including the price and the release date. And finally, we have the needs work category for some cases at the show that are still in prototype staging and have time to make changes that people have talked about online, but we think aren't quite there yet. The BitFenix Enso lands on this list first. It's another case targeting the $60 to $70 range with tempered glass while keeping some RGB on it, but it presently has absolutely no front intake. This case will heat up like a hot box and has no means to get cool air in, but after talking to BitFenix, it sounds like the company is considering adding some mesh or ventilated front intake along with its included RGB LED strip. This is a scenario where we see looks taking priority over engineering, but it's still possible for the two to coexist, and it's important that BitFenix realizes this and fixes some sort of intake before releasing the case. It does have a lot of potential though, particularly in the $60 to $70 market. And another case in the needs work category is the InWin 806, though we do think it's getting there quickly. The 806 shows InWin's unique idea to add wood to a case, making for a sort of modern type design for a home. This looks best on the gaming A1 Cube, which could find its place in the living room of a Frank Lloyd Wright house, for example, but it still looks okay on the 806. We're told that the 806 will use senwood, which is effectively a plywood, with the other two cases using maple and cypress. The senwood panel looks okay, but with a target of $250, we're hoping InWin does more to improve something else in the case, maybe cooling, for example, so that it's better on this Halo case than the previous Halo case, which was the Infinity. So far, it looks like they're on the right track. There's about an inch of intake on the sides of the front and top of that wood panel, which InWin specifically pointed out to us given our criticism of the Infinity, so that shows that they've really taken note of the cooling limitations of previous designs. A bit more work could be done yet, but it's well on its way to being a unique case that's still functional. And that's it for this case roundup. We have plenty of individual case coverage from the show at each of the booths. There are some more Halo type products or just interesting ones in general, like the InWin WinBot, the InWin The Floating Case, and then Thermaltake's Level 20, Corsair's Slate Concept Case, which may not even make it to market, though probably will in some form by the end of the year. So check all of that out if you're interested in more. Article is linked in the description below. As always, you can go to gamersnexus.net. You can support us at patreon.com/gamersnexus, or you can pick up one of our shirts at store.gamersnexus.net. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all next time.